This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. The Cleveland Cavaliers just played their first Summer League game of the year, and I'm not really sure if we can call that a game. Listen, it's the Summer League, so we're not going to make any sweeping conclusions today, but it is worth leading off by saying they got smacked. They got absolutely smacked by the Magic. It was a disappointing performance for anyone who was hoping to have anything tangible to take away from that game. And joining me to discuss this one is my co-host Jackson Flickinger. And let me just start by saying we're having some technical difficulties recording this, so bear with us. Hopefully we can salvage whatever this conversation turns into. There's a little bit of delay on our part. I'm not sure what it'll look like in the final, editing process, but bear with us. We're doing our best. Jackson, how are you feeling after this Summer League game?
I'm feeling fine. I think all the technical issues are due to Tony going sleeveless here. I
Come
think
on,
that
man.
we've never had these technical issues when his arms are covered.
It's my
So
fault.
make of that what you
Body
will.
shaming. Starting the episode by body shaming.
I'm not body shaming.
It's
I'm
like
just pointing
88
out what the
degrees
difference
outside.
is. I know. I live in the same area that you do. Anyways,
Clearly, you have better air conditioning.
I do not have better air conditioning. I just tough it out. I know the conditions I'm
Fair enough.
getting, and I say, you know what, we're just gonna make it work. But the summer league, I think, like summer league's great because you're like, man, I really want to watch some basketball, and then after about 2 minutes of watching this Cavs game, I was like, man, I don't want to watch basketball, and that's sort of what this game was. This game was I'm gonna say if you follow the charge, like people watch charge games that aren't me. Um, if you follow the charge, this was a very much like a charge game in the sense of it got out of hand quickly. There's no defensive principles. There's no offensive principles, and it became pretty much unwatchable. You couldn't really make anything of it after the first quarter. So yeah, we're gonna have a fun time talking about it through our audio issues.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I wanted to see some basketball, and I would still like to see some basketball get played. Again, we
Yeah,
can't even if it was a competitive game, we wouldn't be making any conclusions off of summer league. But in a game like that, it's really hard to take anything away. But just to give my quick thoughts before we dive into specific players, we'll just call it what it is. That was bad. That was pathetic. Poor execution from the start from the Cavs. They got completely ran off the floor from the jump. I don't know if the offense or the defense was worse. They were both pretty ugly
the
and
defense.
disorganized. The defense was just giving up open dunks. That Huff guy, never heard of him, unfamiliar with his game. He was throwing down reverse dunks every other possession. It was crazy. So the defense horrible. Offensively, they didn't move the ball really at all. The only time they passed, it was like ineffective ball movement, and by that I mean they're just kind of passing the ball around. They're not actually creating any advantages or like running through much other than maybe a few like an off ball screen and that's it. So it was just ugly. There was not much for me to be impressed by. I don't think anyone walked away with that game feeling too good about anything. But before we talk more in depth about a few players here, I want to just start by saying if you enjoy the Junkyard Pod and you want to help the channel, maybe help us, afford some better internet, all you have to do is drop a like and hit the subscribe button. Those two things go a long way to help the channel, and it'll help my Wi-Fi at some point, I hope. Bringing this back to the Cavs,
Yeah,
let's
instead
start with the
of hold on, instead of Tony being on the like street corner with his hand out waiting for waiting for some money, he decided to start a podcast just so he maybe could afford some Wi-Fi because this is clearly bad. But
hey, the world needed more podcasts. That's what I thought.
that's
So
yes, exactly.
figured,
Um,
why not me?
why not? Or also why, but that's neither here nor there. Um, the Cavs, that was bad. One of the things that I do want to get off my chest right away is that I think that Isaiah Mobley deserved more of
Yes.
a chance with this team. I think he's sort of been miscast with the charge, and I think that's a problem in that he's 6'8". He's not going to be able to be a center in the NBA, but I think he could be a power forward, and we hadn't really seen him develop as a power forward because he mostly played center his first year. So I think that he's a very good player, especially in this context. And I think he could be somebody who could be a power forward in the NBA if he was better developed. And I was hoping that under this regime, this new coaching staff, that he would get that chance. And obviously, they didn't extend a qualifying offer for him. They could still bring him back, but it seems like if that was in the cards, he would be playing in Summer League right now. So that's disappointing. And I think seeing, I don't want to be too rude, but I think seeing what, like everybody else seeing what Pete Nance provides on the defensive end of the floor, I think is why I'm kind of frustrated that they didn't do that, because it's not like they're keeping somebody who has real promise. Because as much as we like Pete Nance's jump shot, and the jump shot is very real, I'm not sure what he would have. I don't know what he shot today, but he made
I
some
think 2 of
threes.
5.
Yeah, he made some threes, 2 of 5. He can shoot more threes. The 3-point shot is good and it's reliable, and it does open up the offense. But you just can't be that bad on defense, and he's not really like a finisher inside at all unless it's a lob. Like, he's really limited, and it's really hard to see how he ever can be on an NBA floor. And I know that, people are like, oh, Isaiah's only on the team because of his brother. It's like, well, you kind of have the same accusations,
Yeah.
but it's for somebody who's not even on the team. So
Mhm.
I just think that Pete Nance, no, sorry, I think that Isaiah Mobley is actually could be an NBA rotation player. I don't think Pete ever has that. And then also Isaiah Mobley is related to Evan Mobley, which I think is meaningful. Like, I know that, nepotism has become a very big thing in the NBA nowadays, especially with Bronny. But it makes, if, you're not going to get rid of nepotism, but if there's somebody who is related to your up and coming star player who could actually be a useful rotation piece, I think it is worthwhile to have them on your team on a two-way deal. So I just want to get that out of the way quickly, because if you're looking at the biggest differences between this summer league team and last summer league team, it's Sam Merrill. Obviously, he's a real NBA
Mhm.
player, but it's more so Isaiah Mobley, because Isaiah Mobley was on the team last year, and they didn't play like this in the couple games that Sam sat out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you noticed the lack of Isaiah Mobley basically right away, really the lack of a center. I think based on all the decisions that the Cavs have made with Isaiah in the last 2 years, it seems like they aren't very high on him and his ability to play.
Right.
But I still think, as you said, he belongs on a summer league roster. I think he clearly helps this team, if not for, developing him as a NBA player, but just to make them competitive enough to get something out of these games. Having him there would have helped. He's a good passer for a big man. He knows how to play in a team system, as we saw last year. So I think he would have just helped. And again, Pete Nance, man, it's rough. It's really rough. I know that everyone 3-point shooting is a premium in today's NBA, but we've really kind of moved past that to the point where you actually need to be more than just a 3-point shooter. You can't, like, maybe a couple of years ago, it felt like, okay, give me anybody with height and 3-point shooting ability. Now we're kind of transitioning into another era where you need to be able to shoot the three and do at least a couple other things. And Pete Nance right now, for starters, is not a good enough shooter to justify having out there. And he just doesn't really bring anything else. He was completely lost defensively. He jumps at every pump fake. I just, it's almost kind of funny how just anytime someone pump fakes near him, he just jumps. So it was a rough game for Pete Nance. I don't really see an NBA future for him, but Nance family hatred is something that is too prevalent on this pod. So we need someone to
Listen. That's
defend the Nance family.
that stays in the group chat. No, it's one of the things where with Nance, it's if this was a one-off performance, it was easy to write it off. But this is kind of what the G League is like, and I think the center position in the G League is the easiest position to dominate in, just because in the G League the center play is so bad that it's really like it makes kind of evaluating things tough. And he struggles to finish inside against G League centers. He struggles to defend G League centers. So it's just really tough because, as you were saying about like the 3-point shooting, one of the things is like we think about like good 3-point shooting centers for the Cavs, Channing Frye. Channing Frye was an NBA center who learned how to be a 3-point shooter. It seems like Nance is a tall 3-point shooter who's trying to learn how to be a center, and it's really tough to be an NBA center. So it is really easy to get to see the size to say, hey, he can do this, but it's tough.
Yeah, and that was a good place to start because I think for people who aren't like super tied into what the summer league team is doing, we should have mentioned at the start, Isaiah Mobley now with the team. Luke Travers did not play today because of a hamstring injury. So those two are people who, fans are interested in seeing those guys play. Neither of them were on the floor today. Someone who was probably the most, at least for me, I was the most excited to see was Jalen Tyson, the rookie. Now, you mentioned that with Pete Nance, if it was a one-off performance, it would be one thing. I think that's true for what we saw from Tyson. He actually finished with a pretty strong overall game. To start off, it looked very bad. He looked frantic. He had some very awkward stumbles. He dribbled off his own foot. He got his pocket picked trying to bring the ball up the floor, and he had another play where he just passed it directly to the other team. So it started off really rough. But then once he settled in that second quarter, and especially in garbage time, he looked very comfortable dribbling the ball, getting to his spots. Something that's always impressed me with him is just his size and not necessarily his height, but the way that he can take contact, his strength. He had some nice finishes at the rim. And the thing that stands out to me a lot is that he crashes the glass on every shot. He is constantly seeking some rebounds, which is something that the Cavs could use. And he finished with 15 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, shot 7 of 14. So wasn't super duper impressed, but I liked what I saw from him overall. Jackson, what did you think of Tyson?
Yeah, it's tough because it was kind of the Colin Sexton special of all of the good stats kind of came when the game was, 25 points or worse, like behind. So, it's tough to make too much of like the 15 points. I think the rebounds is the thing that really stood out the most to me, is that he's somebody who has a nose for the ball and he's always crashing. It'll be interesting to see how that fits into an NBA context, if he's able to do that the same way and still get back on defense and stuff like that. But it's super helpful to have guys like that, especially on a team that, despite their size, doesn't really get offensive rebounds. So that was really cool. But yeah, it was just a really frantic first. His first shift was really bad. It seemed like, he looked like somebody who started playing a pickup game and realized, whoa, like, I don't actually belong with these guys out there. And that's how I look on, like, when I'm playing pickup basketball, like, whoa, I shouldn't be out here with these guys. And that's kind of how he looked. But he did settle down, so that's good. I'm interested to see how Game 2 and Game 3 goes, because it's not uncommon to see rookies look like this. I often think about Colin Sexton in Summer League, the second time I'm bringing him up. His first Summer League game, it was like, has this guy dribbled a basketball before? Does he know that, like he was just going like 100 miles per hour with everything that he was doing, not in a good way. And then it started to slow down for him. And then throughout Summer League, he looked like a real, he looked really good at that level. So I think we could see a similar thing with Tyson. But yeah, it's tough to make too much of it because, again, it was a 30-point game by halftime. So, like, what can you make of it?
Yeah, that's where I am. I think there was enough flashes there to where I'm feeling encouraged. The way it started very poorly. Looked like he just was not ready for the moment, which is, he's a rookie. He's the 20th pick in the draft. It's Summer League. Might take him a while to get his feet under him. And once he did, I thought he looked much more comfortable. I really like his handle. Again, I know he dribbled off his foot and he got his pocket picked that one time, but overall, I do think he has shown like a pretty fluid, nice handle for that size. And so I'm excited to see how he continues to develop in the summer league, because really, I think he was a product of how disorganized the Cavs looked in general. Like, this is his first game. You're supposed to, and we're going to talk about these next two guys in a second, but like, it's really supposed to be Craig Porter and Amani and even Pete Nance, the more experienced guys, settling the team down and organizing things. Jalen Tyson's out there, and within the first couple minutes, his team's down by 30, and everything is just it's just mayhem. So it's hard to judge him too harshly for that frantic start. But I'm interested to see what he looks like in a more competitive game.
Yeah, and hopefully they get a more competitive game, because
Yeah.
not a whole lot from today made me think like, oh yeah, there's a competitive team in here.
I don't know if they're going back to back for the summer league title. It might not happen this year. They need Sam Merrill. They need Isaiah Mobley. Luke Travers could help them, but they just, it was not a very opening game.
I wrote in my Fear the Sword recap, I was like, Luke Travers could have really helped, and I was like,
yeah, that's
like, I don't know. Don't push me on that too much. But
yeah,
that's
I also
neither
think,
here nor there.
I think Craig Porter just playing like a better, more, the traditional point guard that he usually plays as would help them a lot. So let's take it that way. Actually, who do you want to focus on next? Craig Porter or Amani?
I want to focus on you. We got to get things straight here. Where do you stand on Craig Porter Jr.? Is this your guy? Is this like your guy, like, all caps guy? Like, this is the guy you're standing for.
I'm glad that you brought this up, because this is where I was going to take my Craig Porter tangents to begin with. Listen, as someone who is one of the founding members of the Craig Porter fan club, I was one of the main guys driving the bus. I would like to say there's a reason why I've been subtly pumping the brakes since around February of this year.
So you're leaving your guy.
I still believe in him. I'm not off the bus, but we're slowing down a little bit, okay? Listen, I still think he has clear NBA skills. I think he could have a long, successful career as a backup point guard. But we are really starting to see the warts and flaws that led him to being undrafted to begin with. The limited three-point shot is hurting him a lot. Non-factor on defense today. That was never really a strong suit for him, but he was, at least at the start of his career, he was respectable.
I do want to push back a little bit on the defense thing, because it's so tough to play defense when you're getting nothing inside, when there's no help whatsoever, especially in these pick and rolls and stuff, because it's like Zaire Smith is out there. Like, Zaire Smith is a good defender, but when you have a backline that's that bad, it's like, what is good point of attack defense going to do if you set a screen and it's like wide open from there? So
that's fair.
I do want to push back there.
But even like second half of his NBA rookie season, he started to get picked on defensively, which before he was basically just holding his own. So that's something that concerns me. And the 3-point shot hurts, but really what disappointed me the most today, and I don't think this was much of a problem for him during his rookie season, the decision making today. Horrible. Very, very bad game from him, from basically just a process standpoint. Super bad shot selection. I think he shot 3 for 10. The thing that baffles me with him, and I'm being really harsh, but the thing that just confuses me, I guess, is that he is a limited 3-point shooter, and I would argue he doesn't have much confidence shooting 3-pointers, but whenever he does take a 3-pointer, it's like really difficult step back off the dribble. You don't see him just kind of catch and shoot or take an easy 3-pointer. It's like he forces them, which is really interesting to me. And he had zero impact as a playmaker tonight, which I think was one of the main things hurting them. He was not a floor general. He did not really get them organized. He didn't create many advantages. To be fair, it's his first game back from that ankle injury. I don't know how much that was limiting him. I know he said he's not 100% yet, but I thought he moved fine. He looked out of it tonight. So I expect more from Porter. He has shown that he's better than this.
One of the things that I think was interesting is that, like, one of the things that stood out from Summer League last year was his feel for the game. It felt like he was always making the right play and in the right spots at the right time. But last year, for most of the time, I know like Sharif Cooper got hurt at the end of Summer League, but in the beginning of Summer League, he was playing off of Sharif Cooper, who, has his warts as a point guard himself, which is why he's not on this year's Summer League team. but he is somebody who can also do stuff off the dribble, and it seemed like he's kind of missing that other guy to be like a you know, or organizer with him, because it just felt like there was no flow, there was no getting downhill, there was no breaking the defense down, there was just a lot of like passes to nowhere. And that's just, like that's what you're hoping that when you have Craig Porter Jr. on this team, you're hoping that, okay, he's somebody who's going to be getting downhill, he's going to be getting the bigs involved, he's going to be spraying out the shooters, and you just didn't see that. And that's where it's kind of concerning, because Summer League is typically a worse product than the G League, and it's just not good if you want somebody to like legitimately be a backup point guard this upcoming season to kind of have this kind of showing in their first game.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing that I want to focus on, because I know I'm being very harsh towards Craig Porter. And again, I still believe like the skills that he has, the feel for the game, the playmaking. I know it didn't show today, but I really, really do believe he has NBA level feel for the game, playmaking, ball handling. Even his interior scoring is pretty good. It's mainly the fact that he can't score outside of 15 feet. And some of the mid-range shots, well, I think the mid-range, there's still a place for the mid-range in today's NBA. He was taking bad shots today, like early shot clock, step back. I think one of the announcers, I can't remember who it was, but they mentioned that like you can get that shot at any point in the 24 seconds. You don't have to take that with 18 on the clock. If you want a contested mid-range jumper, you can get that at any point. So,
Right.
But what you mentioned is a good point, that if you're expecting Craig Porter to be the backup point guard this year, which is something that I would have tentatively said is possible, you're going to need to see a better showing from him, because a second-year player who is going to be an impact player, they should be able to dominate Summer League. I mean, it should look almost effortless in Summer League. And so Porter didn't really come close to that today. Maybe he'll end up looking better throughout the next few games. Again, I'm being harsh on him because we know that he can be better than this. He looked significantly better last year as a rookie. So, like, there's clearly, this was just a bad game from him, and I hope that he can bounce back.
One of the things I go back to is second year Isaac Okoro in Summer League was just running
like,
through.
Right away.
He was just like running through teams, just getting to the basket at will, and it's like, we know
at
who
that
Isaac
point, it wasn't even
Okoro
helping
is.
him. Yeah, you're just dominating.
So, and it wasn't like he came back his second season and was like, oh yeah, he still has the same words now. We've talked about that plenty, but it's just like that's where you want to see Craig Porter Jr. dominate. And Craig, to be fair, he is somebody who plays better when he's surrounded with better competition. I think because he's kind of that like spark plug that gets units going and kind of gets them to be more cohesive. And it's sort of tough to play that role when you have all these parts that don't fit together at all. So I do want to give him a little bit of grace there in saying that, like, just because he's bad here doesn't mean that he is bad, but it's just disappointing, because you wanted to see, or you wanted to at least see what he was last year in Summer League.
Yeah. And he played in like one G League game last season, and he dominated. I mean, it looked easy for him. So that's what you expected to see. And maybe he'll do that. Maybe moving forward, he'll have a much better Summer League. I don't think he's a bad player by any means. I still think he could be a backup point guard in the NBA. We're just starting to see some of those flaws that there's a reason he went undrafted. Now, I don't think he should have gone undrafted, but there was a reason why teams passed on him, and we're starting to see that. I think the only other thing that I want to mention with Porter is that you kind of hit on this. Being a good playmaker is one thing, but if you don't have anybody to make plays for, it does become a little more difficult. So the point that you mentioned, how he kind of plays better with better competition and better teammates, I do agree with that.
And I don't know if he's a great playmaker. I think he's somebody who's good in the open floor, like making those passes there. Like, I don't think of him as somebody who's like manipulating a defense to get the ball to the big in a pick and roll, or like he's just spraying out to shooters. So maybe we've overestimated some of his playmaking ability, just because he was getting a lot of his assists through, open floor, through stuff like that. So I think that's fair and by also getting the defense to collapse, because especially early in his rookie season, teams weren't like, his on-ball defender wasn't playing super off of him, so he was getting a lot of help defenses coming, and when the help defenses came, he was able to make those simple passes.
Yeah.
So I think that's also fair to point out too.
Mm. Yeah, and building on that, he's just a very fundamental playmaker. Like he's a very old school traditional backup point guard. He's not creating like a whole bunch of advantages, but he makes good reads, he makes the right pass. And so that's where, as we've hit on a couple times, it could just be, he's surrounded by some guys that aren't moving great without the ball, or they're not big scoring threats. So again, it's tough to make any conclusions off of such an ugly game, but not what you wanted to see from Porter.
Last thing, he did have a sick weak side help block, so that was cool.
Oh, really? He also had a sick behind the back dribble and transition that was very nice. So, who said there was nothing to take away from this game?
Huge fans.
Rounding out this episode, we have to talk about Emoni Bates, still one of the most intriguing prospects in the G League and Summer League. This is someone who people are just really excited about, Emoni Bates, because of how good of a shooter he is. Now, I have thoughts that I want to share here.
That's good.
We'll start with the positives. The added weight that he put on, apparently 26 pounds of muscle, it was noticeable. I thought he looked stronger. His frame looked more rounded out, and I thought he could absorb more contact when he was dribbling. I really, really liked that he started the game by trying to get to the rim. He missed those attempts, but I like that he was getting to the rim and that, he wasn't being pushed off his spots as easily. We saw a couple moments where he was able to get into areas of the floor and just looked more comfortable and on balance. And I think that added weight is a big reason for that. Now, the negative here, and it's not really his fault. I want to be clear. I'm not blaming Emoni for this at all. I just don't like how the game progressed and how, as it came out of reach, they just started letting him do whatever. It turned into the wild, wild west. It's something that, letting him run wild like that is what Eastern Michigan allowed him to do. And I think it hurt his development. I don't like this process for Emoni or this developmental path. I don't think it translates to the NBA, at least not for the Cavs. He isn't going to be taking those difficult pull-up jumpers with the Cavs in the NBA. He's not going to get to dribble 15 times without passing and then take a contested shot. He's really skilled at making difficult shots. I've said this before, but he's a shot maker at this stage, not a shot creator, because he's not creating that much space. He's just able to hit shots over contests, and it's a really, really good skill to have. But the Cavs don't really need that. They don't have space on their team to say, hey, Emoni, it's your turn. Go shoot 7 for 17 tonight. So I would really have liked the process to be better in that department.
That's it. I would say the biggest problem would be he's not a easy shot maker, because the tough shot makers, it's easy to get fall in love with Kyrie's ability to just make these crazy shots. But what Kyrie does is he makes a lot of things look really easy, especially prime Kyrie with, he made so many things look easy, but then he also hit you with I also made this incredible, ridiculous shot that nobody else in the world can make. So being a tough shot maker, if you are an easy shot maker or an easy shot creator, is probably a better way to say that. That's really limiting. It's really tough to evaluate Emoni, and I think it would be super easy to just write him off. I think that's super easy to do. Just say, hey, he's never going to be able to fit in any context. But I think he can, because he's so skilled as a shooter, and I think he can improve as an off-ball defender and as an off-ball mover, but you can't improve in those areas if the team context is this. And I think this is what we saw a lot of times with the Charge last year, where it's really tough to do anything when there's not consistent, on ball scoring. And, he was in a better position last year with Sharif Cooper, because Sharif Cooper is somebody who is a really good scorer, a really good high volume scorer. So it allowed him to play off ball a lot, and he was doing, some of this freewheeling that we saw in the second half. He was doing that some with the Charge, but mostly when Cooper was off the floor. In games without Cooper, this is how it looked, because, when there's nobody else who has the ability to dribble or do anything, it's like, what are you going to do? Tell Emoni to watch,
exactly,
one of these guys dribble? So that's where it's really tough, where it's it doesn't feel very useful to watch, and it doesn't feel like you're learning anything. And if you're not learning anything, it's just frustrating. and he's never gonna be like his best playmaking moments and his best kind of on ball moments happen when he catches the ball and he pushes in transition because teams have to really collapse around him because he's somebody who can pull up from like 2 feet inside the half court because he has unlimited range, and then that allows him to make those passes to find guys and to really show what he can do off the dribble. Half court off the dribble, unless it's like, a couple like coming off a screen and doing something quickly, just is never going to be his game. And it's tough when there's nobody else who you can give the ball to. And again, that gets back to the Craig Porter Jr. thing. That gets back to where I am disappointed in Jalen Williams because, sorry, not Jalen Williams, Jalen Tyson, because it's so like they need somebody to really provide that so you can get the best version of Imani. And Tyson didn't provide that today, even though, he did get better. He was not like a secondary playmaker, and Craig Porter Jr. was not a primary playmaker. So that's where it's like, if they're not going to step up and you don't have anybody else on the team who can do that, well, you're just going to get stuck with this. And I don't want to, like, it's hard to get too mad at him because it's like, what is he supposed to do? Just stand there? So it's just frustrating, and it's just not really productive for anybody.
Yeah, and again, it's not his fault. And I will say I do like the fact that he has the aggressiveness and the confidence to do these things. I don't think you can teach the confidence that Imani Bates has. If you're going to be a great shooter in the NBA, which is what he basically needs to be to make it to that level, you kind of need irrational confidence, and he has it. So that's something that is actually a good thing. The fact that he will go out there and shoot 7 for 17 and not even really blink an eye at taking another jumper, that's good. The problem is they need to simplify his role, in my opinion, and that, of course, becomes more difficult when no one on the roster today was creating advantages or setting teammates up. That just wasn't a thing. So that's why the game devolved into what we saw. But simplifying his role, letting him move more off ball, and as you said, making quick decisions. He had a couple plays today where there was one where I think both of them semi-transition, I think. First one, he catches on the elbow. They close out hard to him, and he just drives. I think he takes 2 dribbles, gets to the rim. He misses. It was like a reverse layup. He misses, but I like that. There's no dancing around. He didn't snatch back and try and cross someone up. Caught it, attacked the closeout, got to the rim. That's what you want to see. The other play, I think there was a pick and roll, catches it in semi-transition, throws a lob, a quick, like, no-look lob. And that's the stuff that you need to see from him. As I mentioned with Nance at the top, being a three-point shooter is a premium in the NBA, but you also need to flash some other skills. And I think Imani has some skills. They're just very underdeveloped because, again, I think Eastern Michigan really failed him in this department by not rounding out his game in a very pivotal year for him in his development. The Charge found a better balance. They struck a finer balance there, but they didn't get that groove today. And I hope to see more of that moving forward in the summer league because that's his path to the NBA. Being a guy who can come off a screen, knock down 3-pointers. He's not going to dribble that much, but when he does, he's making efficient, quick decisions, creating either a shot for himself or passing to a teammate. That's what he needs to do to make it to the NBA. They don't need him taking, dribbling the ball up the floor and taking a mid-range pull-up. That's not, maybe on a lottery team, he would have the space in the room to do that, but on a team that wants to win in the playoffs, the Cavs don't have space for that.
And it wouldn't be good for his development if he was on a lottery team doing that.
Agreed. Yeah. I agree.
So like the best version of Bates that we've seen was last year in Summer League when he was surrounded by real talent and was able to just kind of be that catch and shoot guy. And that was really good for him. And I think he's developed his skills in an off-ball player so much in his time with the Charge. But the problem is you just can't really put it into action as often as you need to because the Charge were a very bad team last year, and the Summer League team is basically an extension of that, and it's a very bad team. So you're just not going to see that. And if you don't have a good G League team, you can't really develop these role player type guys because they're not going to be in their role. We kind of talked about that earlier with Isaiah Mobley. He's forced to play center, and that's obviously not what he can play in the NBA. But now he's not prepared to be a power forward in the NBA because that's not really what he was able to do. So that's where it's a little bit frustrating. But I do believe in Amani. I believe in him probably more than you do. But, you know, it's people who don't believe in him. I totally get that, and I could be wrong. But,
Hmm.
you just got to put him in a better context. And does he get that chance? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. And I will say I left this game feeling more encouraged by Amani than Craig Porter, which is not something that I would have expected. Of course, that could change.
Especially after a bad game from Bates. Like,
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah,
a
I
good
know. They
game.
both didn't play very good, and I still left feeling more encouraged by Bates. And the one thing that I will always say about Amani, I know people, the YouTube comments tear me up because I can be very critical of Amani. I'd like to think that I'm fair and critical of most players, but with Amani, the thing that I will always come back to as a positive is he's a very self-aware player. All the things that we just talked about, he talks about himself. He knows what it's going to take to get to the NBA level, and I do think he's putting in the work. The 26 pounds, I know people like listen. He gained 26 pounds, and he's still 196 at 6'9". Like that's still pretty skinny. So I've seen some people who are kind of dismissing that. Gaining 26 pounds is tough. Okay, in 1 year, give the guy credit for that, and I do think that he is working hard. He's trying to develop. He's improved as an off-ball player. One of the first plays of the game, he came off a screen. I think he missed the shot. It was when Tyson got the putback layup. But I was like, wow, that looked really fluid. He came off a screen, set his feet, and he missed the shot, but it looked really fluid. And that's what you need to see from him. So I believe in Amani Bates as far as like, I think he's going to, whatever his ceiling is, I think he's going to put in the work to reach it. I think anyone who, there was all those concerns pre-draft about his, off-court stuff. I think that's silly. That's stupid. The kid seems like he knows what he's doing. He's working hard. Whether or not that will translate to the NBA, I don't believe in it as much as you do, but I'm certainly not writing him off. I want to be very clear, not to you, but to the YouTube comments. I'm not writing
Yeah.
Amani off. He has a genuine NBA talent. That 3-point shot, he might be one of the best shooters in the world. Like
Yeah.
unironically believe that. It's
Mhm.
just the rest of his game needs so much work. I'm confident he's
It,
going to put in the work to give himself the best chance at that, but will it translate? We got to wait and see. He's only 20.
it's tough because he's somebody who, when the game devolves, he devolves with the game. Like, it's easy to get him, when the offense doesn't have any flow, he's not going to create the flow by moving off ball. Like, not to bring it back to Sam Merrill, because I would never do that. But, like, in the G League, like, even when the offense had no juice, Sam was still running around like an insane person, coming off of screens, and his continual doing that made a juiceless situation a situation with juice. And Imani is not going to run around off screens when things devolve. He will run around off screens when the team is like clicking on all cylinders. He will be doing that, not to the level that Merrill ever has, but he will be that off ball player. It's just that once it starts going south, he will start calling his own number. And if you don't have anybody who can take the ball out of his hands, you are going to get this. And this is not like this is like nothing that he showed today translates to the NBA. And that's what the whole problem is he needs to be getting those reps with a good team. And that, brings us back to you got to have guys that kind of fit. Right now, they don't.
Yeah. Listen, it could just take him some time. Even speaking of Merrill, he's 26 when Sam Merrill finally got his, real chance and made the leap to the NBA and
Mm-hmm.
became where he is now. And so Amani's 20. I really think it's a shame that Eastern Michigan and just his time in college played out the way that it did because he didn't get a chance to develop the way that he needed to. He didn't get that proper development path. I think the Cavs are giving him a better path. I think this is a good environment for him to grow. It's going to take time. Hopefully, the rest of the summer league turns around a little bit. They're more competitive, and we get to see any tangible improvements that he's made. Because I do think he's gotten better. I think he's a better player than he
Yes.
was a year ago. So I want to be able to see that, whether it's in the
Right.
summer league or in the G League the upcoming season. Maybe he'll get some more opportunities with the Cavs. Right now, though, much like I said with Porter, got to pump the brakes a little bit. There's still some things that he needs to show, and it could take some time.
Yeah, it's fair to be skeptical about either one of their ability to actually have a positive impact on the NBA court next season for the Cavs. And
Yeah.
that's something that, the YouTube commenters are going to have to deal with.
Yeah, well, if you want to have a positive impact on YouTube, leave us a positive comment. Leave us a comment on what you thought of this first Summer League game. Drop a like, hit subscribe, do all of those things if you would like to leave a positive impact on the Junkyard Pod. And with that said, that's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed, I already went through the whole spiel. You know what to do. And we're going to continue covering the Summer League. Hopefully, we'll have some more positive things to talk about. I would love if Amani dropped 30 points and the Cavs won next game. We could just say, hey, he's ready. Start him tomorrow. I would love for us to have a more positive outlook, but the Cavs are going to need to show us something. Again, thank you for watching or listening on Spotify. And with all that being said, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs. Brian, what do you think about the sleeveless look from Tony?